When I was in high school, I desperately searched for a job to earn some extra income and eventually help me pay my future student loans. I needed a job where I could also study for my exams, and babysitting came to mind. How hard could it be? It obviously wouldn't be that easy, but I would be in a comfortable place where I could study and earn money. After looking for a while, I found a family ready to hire me as a babysitter. They seemed like a good family, and the kid, Caleb, seemed cheerful as well. The parents thanked me for allowing them to finally take a break from their daily schedules. The next day, I went to their house around 5 p.m. I met the parents, and they briefed me again on the things I needed to take care of, and asked me to contact them in case of any emergencies. They mentioned they should be back by about 11 p.m. and would even drop me back home. I agreed, and they left. Caleb was a sweetheart and wasn't bothersome like the kids in movies and shows. I made him some sandwiches for his evening snacks and played with him for a while. While playing with him, I saw a fast-moving shadow bolt across the window. I jolted in fear and slowly opened the window and peeked. No one was there, so I thought it might have been a bird flying by or my imagination. I shrugged it off and continued to play with Caleb. After a while, he started watching some TV, and I could finally start studying. I poured myself a glass of Coke and took some of the remaining sandwiches and started studying. After about 2 hours of studying, I went to prepare some dinner for Caleb. The dinner was already made, and I only had to reheat it. As I was preparing dinner, Caleb came running to me and said he saw someone outside the window as well. I told him not to worry, checked again, and reassured Caleb. I was able to convince him, but I was a little terrified. But this was a good neighborhood, so it must have been his imagination. I reheated the dinner and gave it to Caleb. We were eating and chatting. Caleb was telling me tales from school, like how he saved a bunch of girls from rabid dogs. Obviously, I knew these were tall tales, but I went along with it and praised him. After eating, we played some video games. He kept defeating me and offered to tutor me on the game. It was going lovely. Soon it was bedtime. I took Caleb to his room, which was upstairs. I tucked him in and turned the lights off. While leaving, he called me. He told me he was scared of the dark and asked if I could turn the light on and be in his room until he slept. I reluctantly agreed. I wanted this job, and I really liked this family. As I was going to turn on the lights, through the gaps in the curtains, I could see the silhouette of a man near the house. Maybe he was waiting for someone, or an Uber. I ignored it and turned the lights on, sitting next to Caleb. After some time, he slept, and I got up, turned the lights off, and opened the door to go downstairs. I was going to continue my studies, and to my horror, as I was going downstairs, I saw a man in the middle of the living room robbing the place. He saw me and started running towards me. I immediately ran upstairs and locked the door. I turned the lights on, pulled the nightstand near the bed, and placed it next to the door as a barricade. Caleb woke up during this commotion. I told him someone is robbing the house, and he immediately had visible tears, the poor kid, but he did not make any noise. The robber banged on the door trying to get in. He started to scrape the door with something sharp, I reckon a knife. I frantically started looking for my phone to call the cops, but I remembered I left it on the dining table. I started crying as well. When Caleb told me he had a phone, we called 911, but by that time the banging on the door had stopped, so we did not know whether the thief left or was waiting for us to open the door thinking he was gone. I called 911 and then Caleb's parents, informing them of the situation. The cops showed up, and I opened the door. They looked around but did not find the thief, but they did see that the thief had engraved, "I will get you," on the wooden door. Soon Caleb's parents came as well, and I explained what happened to them. The cops asked me whether I could identify the thief, but all I could say was that he was wearing a gray hoodie with a ski mask and had a medium build. They noted it down and said they would get in contact if they find anything and asked us to stay someplace else in case the thief comes back. Caleb's parents thanked me for saving him, but it was his phone that saved us. They gave me a boatload of money for this. They dropped me off at my place and drove to a hotel nearby after that. I often think about what would have happened if I wasn't able to close the door on time, or if he was able to break the door, or what if he broke in when I was studying downstairs. I kept in contact with the family, but I never went to that neighborhood again. Till now, the police weren't able to catch the person who broke into the house. The story I am about to tell you happened when I was 8, but it is still fresh in my mind like it happened yesterday. I was the only child to my parents. They were well off, and we had a big house with 5 rooms, a basement, and an attic. The attic generally had my dad's work-related stuff. He was a fashion designer. The basement, on the other hand, was filled with creepy mannequins. My dad had an obsession with them for some reason. I never understood why, even now. My parents would frequently go to restaurants on dates, leaving me to the care of a babysitter. Samantha, the daughter of one of my father's friends, used to babysit me for a while. She was really nice and sweet, and would bake things for me when she came. Unfortunately, she had to leave for college. My parents quickly found another babysitter from some online website and hired her. I never really wanted this new person to look after me. I was used to Samantha. Anyway, she came for the first time to our house. She was given the general rules of when she should make me sleep, no junk after 6 p.m., etc. The first time I saw her, for no rhyme or reason, I was terrified. Something about her really freaked me out. I really did not like to meet new people. It took a while for me to warm up to strangers. My parents left the house, and I was playing with my toys as per usual. The new babysitter came up to me. Her name was Rose. She told me that she would be on the sofa, and if anything was needed, I could let her know. I ignored her and continued to play with my toys. Later, when I came to ask her to give me something to eat, I saw her generally loitering around the house, opening all the doors and looking around. I called out to her, and she was visibly annoyed, but she asked me what I wanted. I asked if she could give me something to eat. She reluctantly agreed and made me some mac and cheese. I ate that and continued to play with my toys and games. After a while, I thought I would watch some TV. When I was coming towards the hall, I saw Rose taking photos of the house with a weird smile and frequently peeking behind the curtains, as though she was waiting for someone. At that time, I obviously did not think of it being weird. Around 8:30 p.m., she told me I needed to sleep and made me get onto my bed. She turned the light off, shut my room door, and left. I could barely sleep because she had the TV on loud, but I was too scared to get out of bed as it was dark in the room, and I was deathly afraid of ghosts and the dark. But eventually, I did sleep. The next day, my parents asked me how Rose was and if I was comfortable. I said she was fine, even though I wasn't fond of her. I didn't want them to worry about me, but I really wished I told them the truth. After a few days, again when my parents were going out, they called Rose to look after me. It went fine, nothing eventful. It was from the 3rd time she came that everything went downhill. When I was playing with my toys and Rose was watching TV, I heard the door opening. I rushed back to see if my parents canceled their dinner and came back. But it wasn't them. It was a guy in his 30s in all black. I was starstruck. The guy looked like a lunatic. I looked at Rose and she told me that was her boyfriend, Danielle. I told her that my parents told her she wasn't allowed to get anyone home, and I would tell them about this. The moment I said this, the atmosphere in the room shifted. They both had this horrifying look on their faces that made my body shudder. Daniel came up to me. He knelt down and pulled out a pocket knife and put it near my eye and asked me if I was still going to say anything. I stuttered and said no, I won't say anything. Then Rose came up to me and said if I ever told anyone this, she would kill my whole family in front of me. I did not know what to do. I was 8 and I was so scared that they would harm my parents and me. She then told me that they were going to lock me in the basement until 8:30, and if I made any noise, it wouldn't end well. I had to agree. I was then locked in the basement with all these creepy mannequins in this dimly lit room and a plate of noodles for my dinner. I sat there petrified. I was so scared that these mannequins would come to life and haunt me. I was constantly looking around to make sure that the mannequins weren't moving. I was a very scared kid, scared of everything. After what seemed like an eternity, the basement door opened, and I ran out to my room, and through the corners of my eyes, I could see their sinister smile. The next day came, and I saw my parents. I hugged them while crying. They asked me if everything was fine. I smiled and said yes, as I was scared they would get hurt. Again next week, Rose was asked to come babysit, and when I saw her again, my heart stopped. As she was talking to my parents, telling them how wonderfully behaved I was, she glanced at me with the same sinister smile. That day was the same. Her boyfriend came, and I got locked in the basement until 8:30. The next day, my dad asked me whether I had seen his watch and glasses because it had gone missing. He was really clumsy and lost things often, so he did not suspect anyone. But I knew it was Rose and her boyfriend. But I was too scared to open my mouth. Rose came often, and it would be the same situation each time, but in my head it got progressively worse. I developed a bedwetting problem and generally stopped talking to anyone. I couldn't even go to the bathroom at night. My parents were really worried about me, but I just told them I saw a horror movie and that really scared me and I would get over it. This occurred for about 3 more months, the worst days of my life. This all thankfully came to a stop when my neighbors, who were rarely at home, were coming back from a trip and saw a random guy in a black hoodie enter the house. They called my parents, and they were shocked. They came rushing home and called the cops as well. The cops, as well as my parents, knocked on the door, and Rose opened the door after a while. When the door was opened and I heard footsteps, I thought some more people had come, and I got even more worried. I wrapped myself in the white cloth used to cover the mannequins. The police searched the house and found Daniel. My parents found out that I was locked in the basement and came rushing. They saw me wrapped in the white cloth, shaking in fear. Rose and Daniel were arrested. Soon after, when their house was raided, they found my dad's and mom's missing items. My parents were saddened by the fact that I had to endure this for 3 months, and they had no idea. I told them that if I had told them, then Rose would have hurt them. They hugged me tight and told me never to worry about Rose or Daniel, as they would never come near them again. My parents never hired a babysitter again. I had to undergo 2 years of therapy to help myself come to terms with what had happened. But even now, as a 20-year-old, it still haunts me sometimes. Who were they? What were their intentions in the long run? Have they done it to someone previously? These were some of the questions that kept me up at night sometimes. When I was 18, I took on babysitting as a job. The money was good, and most of the time everything was fine. Very few instances of kids creating tantrums. My mom one day came and told me that her colleague was looking for a babysitter as she was going out of town for 3 days on some business-related work. She asked me whether I would be willing to look after them from Friday afternoon to Sunday night. I agreed. I met my mother's colleague, Mary, the next day just to know them better and confirm if I'd take the job. Mary told me all her requirements, the kids' schedules, etc. She told me that I could use the guest bed. Then she introduced me to her son, Ron, a sweet-looking kid, a bit shy though. She told me that he was very well behaved and I need not worry. But she told me not to let him watch anything remotely scary, as from when they moved here, he has been concocting stories of hearing noises and about his invisible friends and all sorts of nonsense. I was a little creeped out. I did not have a brother, so I thought maybe guys just like to make up fantasy in their head. The next day around 3 p.m., I went to their house. After I arrived, Mary left and asked me to contact her if there were any issues. Ron was sleeping at that time, and I was just in the kitchen looking around to see where the spices and utensils, etc. were so I could make dinner later. After familiarizing myself with the kitchen, I went to the living room and just sat on the sofa. I was bored but did not turn on the TV as Ron was sleeping, so I was just scrolling through YouTube on my phone. As I was on my phone, I heard a sudden thud coming from Ron's room. I ran there to see if everything was okay. He was still sleeping. I looked around the room, and I saw a lampshade had fallen. The window was open, so I thought maybe it was just a gust of wind. During all this, Ron woke up as well. He greeted me and then introduced me to his imaginary friend, Beth. I just waved and said hi, not knowing what else to do. This was weird, but I was getting paid well, so I just went along. Later, I made him some hot chocolate so he would warm up to me. I made 2 glasses, one for him and one for Beth. He drank his glass and then put the other glass in his room and said Beth would drink it later. Again, I did not really know how to respond, so I just said, "Sure, let me know if she wants more." Later during the evening, when I went to his room, I saw that the cup of hot chocolate was on the floor, but it was empty. Only a few leftover drops had fallen on the floor. Was it Ron that drank it? But he was in his living room the entire time playing on the PlayStation. Maybe he went quietly and drank it. Or maybe it was an animal, I suppose, I don't know. I looked around to see if there were any squirrels. Then I closed the window. I put the cup in the sink and prepared dinner. I made him a burrito and brought it to him. He was still on his game. He paused the game, surprisingly, and ate his dinner. We even chatted a little bit. He told me he wanted to make video games when he grew up. I smiled and told him to give me an early copy of any games he made. He laughed. After dinner, he started playing again. I went back to the kitchen and did the dishes. I went to the living room and asked Ron whether he would teach me how to play the game. It was a game about a fox-looking creature running around collecting mangoes and jumping on moving platforms. He agreed, and we played for a bit. Later, I told him it was his bedtime, and he promptly went to sleep. He asked me not to close the door and have the light lamp turned on throughout as he was scared. I told him there was nothing to be scared of. He told me that whenever he tried to sleep, he always heard weird noises from outside the window and inside the cupboard. I told him not to worry, as it was probably an animal, and he could sleep rest assured. Nothing eventful happened that night. The next day I made him breakfast and made him do his homework and study a bit, and just the usual. During the afternoon, when I was walking around the house, picking up his toys and generally keeping the house clean, as I was crossing Ron's bedroom, through the half-opened door, I thought I saw a small girl sitting on the bed. I was shocked, but I opened the door fully to check. I saw no one. Then suddenly I heard scurrying on top of me, as though someone was running in the attic. I asked Ron, and he told me he's heard the same thing multiple times, and the girl I saw on the bed was Beth. He said she was really nice as long as you listened to her. It was so eerie listening to this. I was wondering whether I was seeing things because of some sort of placebo. I was a little irritated, and I told him that Beth was imaginary. There was no one in the house except the both of them, and that this is his imagination because he used to see scary movies. When I said that, he looked really worried and told me that I had made Beth angry, and I should apologize to her. All this gave me a headache, and I went to rest for a while. This kid was sweet, but the things he said were so haunting. While I was sleeping, I woke up because I felt a huge pressure on the chest, as though I was stuck in a tight spot. When I woke up for a moment, I saw an old man right at the foot of my bed. I shot out of my bed and ran to the living room. Ron was sitting at the table doing some coloring. He asked me if everything was fine. I told him everything was fine because I didn't want to scare the little kid. I didn't know what was going on with me. Are Ron's stories getting to my head? I did not know. Things went regular for some time. I made some snacks for him, and we played together for a little while. Then I made dinner and did the dishes. After dinner and some chit-chatting, Ron told me that he knows that no one believes his stories about Beth or the noises. But it was true. I did not know what to respond to that. I just told him not to worry about it too much and go to bed. Before going to bed, he asked me whether I would just stay with him with the lights on as he was particularly more scared that night. I agreed, and to be fair, I was scared as well. I sat on the chair in his room while he was going to sleep. Once I saw that he had slept, I got up to leave the room. Just as I was leaving, I heard knocking on the window. I turned and saw nothing there. I went to close the curtains when I heard the sounds of grunting from within the cupboard. I was dead scared. That did not sound like an animal. I took a few steps back from fear when I saw something I cannot unsee. The cupboard door opened, and I saw a decomposed-looking arm grip the door handle. I knew someone or something was in there. I immediately woke Ron up and ran with him downstairs. I've seen my fair share of horror movies, and I wasn't going to investigate or stick around to find out what happened. I told Ron that I was taking him to my house, as I thought someone was in here with us. I ran to the car with him and informed the police and Mary as well. The police went and looked around, but they said no one was there. The next day morning, Mary had come back early as well after I told her what happened. I did not tell the police or Mary what I actually saw. I just told them that someone had broken in and was hiding in the cupboard. I knew no one would believe me if I told them about ghosts haunting us. Mary thanked me for being quick-witted and saving Ron. On the outside, I put on a brave face, but from the inside, I was dreadfully afraid. What was going on in that house? Was it actually haunted? Or were we both just out of our minds? I wonder what would happen if we stayed there longer, or I opened the door to investigate. After half a year, I heard that Mary and Ron moved out from that house as well. I wasn't in touch with them anymore, so I don't know why, but it was probably for the best.